Hi, I'm Rick Barron, your host, and welcome to That's Life, I Swear. They say ignorance is no protection from the consequences of inaction. I'd like to share a story with you that began quite a few years ago with a Christmas wish. But I'll get into that story in a minute and throw out a question that's going to cover this topic today. And that question is, why are men afraid of going to the doctor? Yeah, I know, guys, we're all Superman. Of course, we're fit as a fiddle, we exercise, lift weights, watch what we eat. In short, we have it all under control. So what could go wrong? Well, hold that thought, if you will. I thought I'd do a little research on why is it that men are afraid to go to the doctor. In my research, I found that men between the ages of 35 to 54 are the biggest segment. Only 43% of that middle-aged group ever reported seeing their doctor for annual physicals. Only 43% of middle-aged men reported seeing their doctors for annual physicals. Sadly, that percentage decreases as men get older, at which point a serious illness pretty much compels them to see a professional, and it might be too late to address the issue on hand. In the same group of men, 72% said they would rather do household chores like cleaning the bathroom, mowing the lawn, than go see a doctor. That's when the honey-do list is not a problem. Men over 55 skip seeing a doctor drops to 59%. That's still a pretty high number. But there is some good news to report. Some men, approximately 20%, see their doctors every year. However, that same 20% confessed not being upfront with their physical status, which to me somewhat defeats the purpose of going to see the doctor. So what's the holdback? As I was continuing my research, I came across some stats that kind of relay what that is. 46% say they're embarrassed. I can get that. 40% say they felt uncomfortable. 38% said they thought their health problem would resolve on its own. Wishful thinking, indeed. 37% said they thought something was wrong, but were not willing to face the diagnosis and or would rather not know if they had any issues. With all the research I did, there was one salient data point that kept coming up as why men avoid seeing the doctor. And that word is fear. It's being afraid of the unknown. I get it. One day you feel a bump in your shoulder that you swear wasn't there before. Deep down inside, you know what you ought to do. You make the attempt to pick up the phone and make a call to the doctor. But then fear takes over again. It's the fear that the bump in your shoulder could be something, and it's that fear that you let it drag on for months. So how did this all generate with men not wanting to see the doctor? Well, when I look back at my childhood, I remember boys being told to stop being a wimp and take it like a man. My research took me to a survey that validated that point. The survey reported that 41% of men say they were told as children that men don't complain about health issues. For many men, fear is what drives men's decision-making in ignoring that annual visit to the doctor, regardless if they're in good health. Well, guys, you don't know what you don't know. And that's where problems with your health can get the better of you. So there you have it. Be a man, afraid to hear the diagnosis. Making an appointment is just a waste of time. And of course, fear. But as I said at the beginning of this podcast, I had a story to share. But first, let me start off this way. I have to be transparent and confess that I'm guilty as charged. I, for a while, held on to the same idiotic thinking about not seeing a doctor. Like the vast majority of men, I felt strong in my conviction as a man. Why see a doctor? I'm in perfect health. I take care of myself. However, little did I know that down the road, I would learn that something was creeping up on me. That something would soon confront me and forever change my mindset about seeing the doctor, regardless of how I felt. So what got me to change my thinking to erase my silliness that I'm superhuman? My wife. And here's where my story begins. One day, I saw her coming down the hall, looking at me, thinking, oh, she's got another honey-do list. But that wasn't it. Instead, she asked me a question. So, mister, we have great health insurance at work, and yet, since we've been married, I've never seen you go to the doctor to do an annual physical. I didn't say a word. She looked at me, and her eyes said, why? And then she said, well, I'm waiting for an answer. Well, I came back with the various excuses, song and dance of how I felt great, and I didn't see any need to go see a doctor. Well, that's when she came up to me, looked me square in the eye, and she said, have you ever wondered what you don't know is maybe creeping up on you slowly, and that your refusal to have yourself checked out goes beyond an annoyance? That's something that could cause you irreversible harm. Well, she had a point. I couldn't come back with an answer. Before I could even say a word, she then said, I want a Christmas wish from you. A wish that I want you to give me every year. Okay, so what is it? I want you to promise me and yourself to schedule to see a doctor for an annual exam every year. Well, the way she delivered her message, there was no need to debate. I gave her wish, and I quickly went to the phone that afternoon and called the doctor to set up my ongoing annual exam. That Christmas wish was promised over 20 years ago, and true to my word, I've been consistent ever since. Over the years, my checkups went well and almost became routine. Until one day. As I was getting ready to leave my doctor after my checkup, he asked me, I noticed there was a mark on your left wrist. How long has that been there? Not sure. Guessing maybe a year or two. What I didn't tell him was that I did notice it before and just didn't bring it up in the discussion. My doctor recommended that to be on the safe side, to have it checked out before I head home. As I walked across the street to see the doctor, I was beginning to wonder what was going on. What might this spot be? And I said, stop worrying. Don't get yourself wrapped up in knots until you see the doctor. Seeing the doctor at the dermatology department, I waited for a few minutes until he came walking in the door, and then he introduced himself, and he quickly started doing a body scan and checking my entire body, but more so checking the spot that was called in question. As he began to examine, I couldn't help but notice his facial expression that to me said, I've seen this before. And his eyes telegraphed that he didn't like what he saw. The doctor took a biopsy of the spot and said he would have to conduct some tests, but assured me he would get back to me that afternoon with his analysis. Driving home, my focus was on the biopsy, wondering what might be or not. Was this going to be that moment when I reflected back to what my wife told me about ignoring what could be creeping up on me? I must confess my head was buzzing with the what-ifs. When I got home, I didn't think of telling my wife what happened, because I didn't want her to worry, or myself. Later on that day, the phone rang, and when I picked up the phone, it was the doctor. He came straight to the point and said that what they discovered was melanoma. Superman just got knocked over with kryptonite. I stared at the wall for a few seconds, thinking I didn't hear this. The fear factor, hearing a bad diagnosis, everything I've been talking about, just raced through my body like a spear of ice. So the doctor said the next thing we have to do is come back the next day and see 2 doctors. My first doctor was one who specialized in the diagnosis and treatment of cancer. As she was checking my wrist, she gave me information on what would be next steps in terms of surgery. And I thought, surgery? In my mind, I thought, couldn't I just take some pills and be out of here? Oh, the thoughts that went through my head at that moment. The next thing, the other doctor that I had to meet came in and introduced himself, and he explained the nature of what the surgery was going to encounter. He was very careful to lay out what might happen as he conducted that surgery. He indicated to me that not knowing how deep he may have to go could impact some nerves. I could lose the feeling in my finger, all my fingers, even my entire hand. Well, that was all I needed to hear. I wanted to run out of the room and scream. At this point, I lost it and I started to cry. I wanted to put on my Superman cape and fly as far away as possible. Well, long story short, the operation was a success. Although it took 2 operations and extensive therapy for my wrist and hand. I must admit that when the cast was first removed and the dressing taken off, that the first sight of the wound made me a little sick to my stomach. Looking at the size of it, I thought, is this really going to heal? The wound was about the size of a standard PC mouse. But from the looks of it, it looked a lot bigger than that. My wife and I took turns changing the dressing, and in about 3 to 4 months, the wound was fairly healed. Must say the human body is remarkable. So why am I telling you all this? Guys, it's not worth brandishing that macho badge. We're not Superman, and you know what? It's okay. So what lessons can you take away from my story? One lesson to draw from this is thinking about the ramifications of your inactions to have yourself checked by a doctor every year. You don't know what you don't know. And should you want to stick to that thought, it can only be a matter of time when something does creep up on you, and it might be too late to deal with it. So please, don't let the thought of not seeing a doctor because you think you're healthy rent space in your head. Now, perhaps you have a family history where no one has ever had a serious illness or something that required surgery. Well, that's great. However, did you ever think that maybe you might be the first one to have such a problem? Do you seriously want to roll the dice on your health? Seeing a doctor every year is essential. Not to mention, you want to establish and maintain a relationship of trust with your doctor. In addition, you'll want to receive counseling based on your family health history and your lifestyle. So, stop procrastinating. Pick up that phone. Make that appointment. Do it for your family. But honestly, do it for the person that matters here. You. That said, time to hang up the Superman cape. Again, you don't know what you don't know, regardless of how tough and healthy you think you are. There is one more thing. I want to thank my beautiful wife for making me understand that not taking care of your health, regardless if you think nothing is wrong, is plain nonsense, if not stupid. Because of her, I never have to wonder about the what if. I had never gone to see my doctor on an annual basis. Making that trip every year to see my doctor has now become one of my favorite appointments to keep. Well, there you go. What can I say? That's life, I swear. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe here or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. See you soon.